Hey everyone, good morning. It is about 9:45 a.m. on this Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025, one day away from celebrating 17 years with this channel. And I do thank you guys for the support on that. And as I've alluded to, tomorrow I will do what I can to give you guys a live stream talking about 17 years, or just to celebrate 17 years and all that. So be on the lookout for that when it drops. I'll be on the lookout for that when it drops. But anyway, I also want to apologize if you hear any boom boom sounds. Those are going to be like text messages, notifications for text messages, Facebook notifications, Instagram notifications, TikTok notifications, Facebook Messenger notifications, Instagram Messenger notifications, and so on. And I do apologize if you hear a big boom. That's going to be from my bank saying something got declined, but I don't think I have to worry about that for right now. And I also do want to apologize if I sound a little, I guess you could say cough-like. It's allergies and all that. So basically, yeah, I do apologize for that. And I'm still kind of waking up, even though I've been awake for a couple of hours. I had to wake up a little early to help out the matriarch get some of her things into the car because it's the second to last week of the school season. And basically, they're going and prepping themselves to close out, and they got to take care of all these other things as well, if you know what I mean. But with that said, let's get on to the topic of this video, which I'm sure you can read in the title as to what it is. So recently, I think the other day, Sarcastic Chorus, whose channel I am subscribed to, and I do recommend you guys check it out as well, because they talk about a variety of animation topics. Mostly when Hell of a Boss and Has Been Hotels going on, they talk about that. The episodes, where they think certain things are going to lead into a next episode or next season. And, those videos are really taking off for them. But they also talk about some other stuff as well. And recently they've been talking about, some relationships in different animated media, anime or animated media. And the most recent video really surprised me and a lot of other folks because I think it was something nobody expected them to do. And they wanted to talk about in this video, and again, you see the title down below as a response to it, Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, and his unhinged love life. And they talked about a variety of the love interests he had, the girlfriends that he had throughout the series, the franchise's run from 1969 to present. And honestly, I have to say they did a good job on what they brought to the table because they did not really miss out on some of the more notable, like I was saying, notable love interests that he had, or at least the ones that had crushes on him, and so on. Heck, they even touched upon the farmer girl, I would say the hillbilly girl, whatever you want to call her, from Boo Brothers. They touched upon her. They touched upon Googie from Reluctant Werewolf, which, by the way, I am one of the few that actually likes that movie. They talked about Googie. They talked about Crystal from Alien Invaders. They talked about Velma, of course, from Mystery Incorporated and Variety in the beginning of the series, apparently. They talked about Velma's sister having a thing for Shaggy, of course. And they talked about some other love interests he's had as well. So, and again, this all goes across the whole Scooby-Doo board, including the Velma series that they did recently. But I noticed that they did omit one character. They touched upon the character and even said if you dyed Googie's hair orangey red, or oranges, or very red oranges, or very orangey red, if you will, red orange, if you will, if you dyed it in that color, essentially Googie in Reluctant Werewolf would be that character, because even though she had her own personality, she had somewhat of the quirks and somewhat of the personality, some of the traits, if you will, of said character. And again, I was surprised he didn't, include her in this, even though he touched upon her and referenced her and even talked about her a bit, but not but not in the sense that she would be labeled as a love interest, as part of Shaggy's love life. But I think you do need to include her. And there are some people that actually bring it up in the comment section as well, of, them being supportive of Shaggy being with her just by the fact of what we saw in the early to mid 80s. And of course, I'm talking about Daphne Blake. Now, I've touched upon this relationship on numerous occasions, throughout the entire series run. I've touched upon it on numerous occasions. And I'm one of the few that actually supports it. I'm one of the few, maybe one of the few, many, I should say, that actually supports it. And I even touched upon why they brought her back, in my opinion. I believe the reason they brought her back is mainly because of the fact that she basically felt like she could fit more in with the modern era. Like, she was one of those few characters you could transplant out of the late 60s, early 70s, and into the early to mid 80s, and it would be without a hitch. Like, there would be no, question, like, why does she look like, why is she dressed, I should say, like she's out of the 1970s or 60s or whatever. There'd be no questions asked about that. I also believe that the reason she was brought back as well is because she was the third most popular character out of the Mystery Inc. gang. Of course, we know there was Fred, Velma, Shaggy, Scooby, and Daphne. But I think when you look at ranking them, a lot of people would say Daphne, along with Shaggy and Scooby, are the three most popular. That's why she was brought back, in my opinion. The other reason, of course, was they wanted a character in the 80s that could relate to girls. Because we were at a time where they were trying to incorporate more girl power into the shows, or into the shows kids were watching. And basically, Daphne was the character that was chosen to fill that role when it came to Scooby-Doo. So that was pretty cool. I guess that was a pretty good idea on Hanna-Barbera's part. But why would I say that he should have included her? Why do I believe Sarcastic Chorus should have included her and not omitted her and just referenced and touched upon her here and there? Mainly because of the fact that, again, I'm not the only one that feels this way. I mean, heck, look at some of the more recent movies over the past decade. I mean, come on, seriously. Legend of the Phantasaur, which is a direct-to-video movie, who is the one that offers to help Shaggy out? Not only try to be brave, but ride a bike and all that. Who's the one that helps him out? Daphne. Who's the one in that one musical direct-to-video animated film? Who's the one that basically is singing at the beginning with them, with Shaggy and Scooby? Daphne. Daphne is the one. She's the one that pops out of the sunroof to join him. I mean, come on, seriously. Seriously. Heck, who is the one that Daphne chooses to pretend to be her boyfriend in the, I guess you could say, very mixed, if not very very underwhelming Be Cool Scooby-Doo? Who's the one Daphne chooses? She chooses Shaggy. So you can't blame me or anybody else, for wondering and asking, okay, Sarcastic, why did you leave her out? Why omit her? Now, I can understand that Sarcastic would look at it as, well, she's with Fred. Yes, I do agree with that. But if you take Fred out of the equation from 83 to at least 86, and then you take a look at all the other examples I used, there is something there that fans are cool with, fans are fine with. Heck, I had that big Hanna-Barbera cartoons book, and I pointed this out in a video, and I pointed this out when I took the image as well. You have this big group shot. You have this big group shot of all the Hanna-Barbera characters, and out of the Mystery Inc. gang, you have three or four. I think you have Scooby and Shaggy, you have Scooby and Scrappy, but you also have Shaggy, and the one next to him, Daphne. Yes, they have Daphne next to Shaggy. Now, I don't know when the group shot was taken, but if you're going to, omit Fred and Velma from that and just put Daphne with Shaggy and right next to him, along with Scooby and Scrappy, that right there to me is a message being sent that, yeah, Bill and Joe probably wanted these two to be paired up. That's probably what happened. Bill and Joe, wanted these two to be paired up, going forward. And I don't know if Ken Ruby and Joe Spears agreed with that, because I think they left afterwards or during the run of Scooby-Doo, the all-new Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo show, which Daphne returned in, which morphed into New Scooby-Doo Mysteries, which evolved into 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. I don't know. I don't know. If they were supportive of it as well. But Bill and Joe, obviously, in my opinion, Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera, honestly, in my opinion, wanted these two to be paired up, because I think, when you look at a lot of the animated shows and franchises they had at the time, you had at least one couple in each of them. And Scooby-Doo, I think, in their opinion, in my belief, it should not be an exception. So I think that's why they did it as well. And there's a lot of evidence, not just in the all-new Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo show, as well as, in the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries, but also in 13 Ghosts, that was the intent. I mean, heck, they were living in the same household. Now, some would say, well, that house is the same house from Reluctant Werewolf, right? Yeah, it is. And that also brings up a theory. That brings up a theory that coincides with what Sarcastic was saying. See, Sarcastic said that if you basically dyed Googie's hair in Reluctant Werewolf to the hair coloring of Daphne, she's essentially, again, with her having somewhat of a different personality but similar traits, she's essentially Daphne. That's who it is. But it's, a different character in Daphne's place. And that to me brings up maybe a theory, a speculative theory that Daphne was supposed to be in that role. Yeah, I believe Daphne was supposed to be in that role. And I think the reason they didn't do that is because of one reason. They had just launched on ABC a pup named Scooby-Doo, or at least they were in the process of it when they were making this movie. And so to me, they didn't want to get people confused, with the different versions of Daphne, if you know what I mean. They didn't want, to get them confused, from what they saw in Pup Named Scooby-Doo to what they're seeing now. So I think that's why Googie was made. They made her basically to be that stand-in, because I think that slot was originally meant for Daphne, which, in my opinion, would have solidified what Bill and Joe wanted. Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera wanted and intended for, and that's Daphne and Shaggy to be an item. But I think because of, Pup Named Scooby-Doo coming, being in existence or coming into existence, they decided, nope, let's just go this route, make it easier, less confusing, and then see what happens from there. And I think that's what occurred, in my opinion. But like I said, I'm kind of surprised he didn't really take time to talk about the Shaggy-Daphne situation, because it's obvious that Bill and Joe were intending for them to be an item. And again, there's so much evidence out there, even with the newer shows and even the newer movies, I should say, the newer shows and movies, where they are basically, pushing Fred and Daphne, in the animated versions of Scooby, even though there's a lot, even though they're pushing them, and everything, there's clear evidence, if not Easter eggs, out there that, that basically WB, those working on these shows and all that, as I've mentioned before, acknowledge that there is a fan base. There is support for, as it's called, Shagmy, that's SHAGPHNE. There is a support for that pairing. I mean, they wouldn't have put the dang scene in Mystery Incorporated where they made out, unbeknownst to themselves because they were drugged, but they wouldn't have put that scene in there if they didn't acknowledge it or they didn't know it existed. They wouldn't have done that. Even though it wasn't meant to mean anything more than, hey, they didn't know what was going on, it happened still. It happened still. And again, I look at, like I say, Legend of the Phantasaur. I look at that musical version of that musical animated Scooby movie they did, and the evidence is there. The evidence is there, in my opinion. Now, again, going back to the early to mid 80s, like I said, I truly believe Bill and Joe wanted this because one of the episodes, they have Daphne going back home to her mansion, to her parents' mansion, to visit them, to stay with them for a bit. And she brings Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy, but mostly Shaggy. And the father is very complimentary of Shaggy. And a lot of people have pointed out, you do not bring your best friend or your coworker, to meet your parents. You don't do that. You don't do that, as if, hey, this is my coworker and they're just going to stay with me for a bit and then we're going to go back to work. No, you don't do that. This is viewed as Daphne saying, hey, I want you, Mom and Dad, to meet Shaggy, my boyfriend. It's like you can't argue with that. You can't argue with that. You know what I'm saying? And then they're dancing with each other in the costume party during that, and she's laughing, giggling a little bit when he has the the eye closure on the night helmet fall on his face. And then in 13 Ghosts, he's the first one she hugs and she gets reverted back from being a werewolf. I mean, come on. Too much evidence. Too much evidence, okay? Too much evidence, all right? And also, I think the other reason they did it is because she's more willing to go along with some of the outlandish disguises and stuff that Scooby and Shaggy will come up with, to kind of get out of the situation. I do apologize for that vibration, guys. I told you something like that was going to come in. That's an email from my Comcast email. But basically, getting back on topic, she's someone that's more willing to go along with the shenanigans and all that to try to get out of a dangerous situation, or even, try to solve a mystery or solve something, that seems, very befuddling to everybody else except for them. Because Daphne, again, people have said she's like a hybrid of herself and Fred and Velma in one. She, basically, she'll sense when something's off a little bit, and basically she'll imply, a lot of the shenanigans, a lot of the silliness that Scooby and Shaggy will come up with to help them out. So you get what I'm saying, right? You get what I'm saying. So I think that's the other reason. I think that's one of the other main reasons she's more willing to go along with it. But I also think if you look at it from a I guess you could say very, close eye perspective, go back to the early days between 1969 to 1977, if you will, basically the first decade, if you will, of Scooby-Doo, from the Scooby-Doo Where Are You, new Scooby-Doo movies, Scooby-Doo show, and the first Scooby-Doo, in the first iteration of Scooby and Scrappy, where it was still the Mystery Inc., show and everything, you just had Scrappy involved. You look at that, and there are several times throughout all those runs where Daphne would be in agreement with Shaggy and Scooby, like, yeah, something spooky is here, something scary is going on here, and I don't want no part of it. Heck, there was an episode from new Scooby-Doo movies. I think it was guest starring Don Adams. And Don Adams was like an exterminator or something like that. And he did not want to run away from a fight or a situation there. So he asked for people to raise their hand, like if they believe or do not believe something supernatural is going on. And Fred and Velma and him raised their hand believing something not supernatural was happening. But on the other side of the coin, Shaggy, Scooby, Daphne believed something supernatural was going on. You understand what I'm saying, guys? You understand what I'm saying? And another Easter egg from the first iteration of the Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo show was pretty much an extension of the Scooby-Doo show and all that, with Mystery Incorporated still part of it. Who was more concerned about Daphne not feeling well and thinking, oh my God, could this be signs she could turn into a vampire, and all that? I think it was in the episode Left My Neck in San Francisco. Who was more concerned? Shaggy and Scooby. So you kind of see what I'm getting at here? What I'm getting at is it's obvious. It's obvious from the get-go. That, there were intentions, especially when they brought her back over Velma and Fred, but mostly Velma, because I think Velma would have been that second choice. It's obvious that Bill and Joe looked at several of those little Easter eggs themselves, those little, moments here and there throughout the first decade, and said, let's bring her back and let's try to pair her off with Shaggy as a couple. Because again, not one Hanna-Barbera show that I knew of up to that point that I watched as a kid, there was not one that you did not have a couple in. There was not one that I know of. So I'm not basically afraid to admit that I believe Shaggy and Daphne were meant to be. And again, I'm not afraid to come out and acknowledge, with all due respect to Sarcastic Chorus, I'm not afraid to acknowledge that he should have he should have included, that's the word I'm looking for, he should have included Daphne into the equation. But again, I understand why he didn't, but I would have. Just like maybe an honorable mention, maybe a little bit of a bonus honorable mention, if you will, include her in there. Just based on some of the things I pointed out and others would point out to him. But anyway, though, guys, I wanted to do this little response audio video to Sarcastic Chorus's take on Shaggy's unhinged love life, and basically give my thoughts and all that as to why I believe he omitted Daphne from the thing and only referenced her here and there, but why he also should have included her because of everything I've mentioned. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, share the video. Also, click on the links in the description to help find my content elsewhere. You can find me at all your favorite audio and video podcast affiliates like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Radio Public, iTunes, Overcast, and even SiriusXM if you look really hard. Also, you guys can find me at rumble.com at BWRoses, odyssey.com at BWRoses-5, VENMO.com at BWRoses. You can also find me at DeviantArt.com at BVW1979, InkBunny.net at BWRoses. You can also find me, guys, over at my Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. Also find me over at Patreon.com at BWRoses. And you can support me over at Cash App and Venmo. Be greatly appreciated. And also, guys, you can follow me over at TikTok at BWRoses, aka Twitter, aka X at BWRoses, and at Blue Sky. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are on what I've had to say here. Comment down below. And until next time, I am out.